Welcome to Shaping Work, the podcast where creativity, leadership, and humanity meet. And maybe grab a coffee. I'm Jill Barrett. Today I'm joined by Chris Sentz, founder of Vitruvian, whose work is centered on housing, workforce, and building new ways of delivering work when old models no longer hold. Chris is thinking deeply about how we build when labor is strained, innovation is uneven, and communities need solutions that last. So whether you're an architect, engineer, developer, or builder navigating real constraints, or a leader asking how to keep people at the center while still moving work forward, you're in the right place. Meet Chris Sentz, founder of Vitruvian. Chris is working at the intersection of construction, technology, and workforce development with a clear focus on one of the most pressing challenges we face right now, housing. Chris, I'm really glad you're here.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Joe. I really appreciate it.
Vitruvian is a company rethinking how housing gets delivered when labor shortages, outdated models, and rising costs make the status quo harder to sustain. Using 3D printed concrete alongside workforce training and local partnerships, Vitruvian is building systems designed to support both people and projects over the long term. Before Vitruvian, Chris built and exited a venture-backed tech company and then made a deliberate shift toward work he felt served a deeper need. For him, housing is foundational, tied directly to health, education, workforce stability, and community resilience. Chris's work centers on creating practical pathways into skilled trades, developing local hubs for training and production, and building platforms that help communities deliver housing without burning out the people doing the work. So this is a very timely conversation for our audience and our customers. Maybe you could tell us how Vitruvian got its start and why 3D.
Yeah, yeah. I don't have a traditional background in this space by any means. Like you said, I come from more of the tech space. I've started a company young and exited a couple times and led a lot of really great brands on engaging their customers within the digital space. And after about 20 years of that, I wanted to do something different. I had a family. The world in the 2020s just seemed like a totally different place. And it felt like I hadn't paid enough attention to the physical world. I think generationally, my generation had
Mm.
not. We've loved the digital world. It's provided a ton of opportunity, but the physical world has been not really focused on. And I think we're in a place where society is less connected than ever. And foundationally to that is housing. Housing is at the root of so many of our social issues and our communal issues. And so I looked at housing and I started talking to all the smart people that I know about why does it seem like no matter how much money you have, housing's an issue. You either can't afford the house you're in or the house that you want, or you're always putting more time, effort, and money into it than you need to. And I was turned on to 3D printing by some pretty smart folks as a solution that could address some of the core problems, and that's technology and materials. We were essentially using 2,500-year-old systems to build today, which means they're heavily optimized, but they're not really made for the reality of today. And labor, there's a huge labor shortage. And we feel that the wonderful thing about 3D printing is it can attract a new labor pool, people who wouldn't traditionally be attracted to the trades. And so, hey, it ticks some of the biggest boxes with this issue, and started to pursue 3D printing as one of the solutions towards the housing crisis.
And how's it going?
It's going well. The journeys are never linear, right? So first you get really obsessed with this idea of a machine. And that's what we did. We brought in some great engineers and designed a handful of machines. Most of them weren't great designs. Eventually we landed on one we called the Scorpion that we really liked. And that's your obsession. You like, I'm a technologist, get obsessed with technology. And then you go and you start to explore the problem and your solution more, and you realize there's a lot more nuance. So we were really fortunate to go to Athens, Ohio. A Survivor Advocacy Outreach Program is a partner of ours that pulled us into Athens with the Ohio Department of Development supporting our efforts. And we went in and talked to the community, and early and often the community gave us very blunt feedback. And it went from, hey, we're going to come in and do this thing to let's work together towards a solution. And this model form that went from probably a more traditional model to a community centric platform model where we started working with the bricklayers local 23, the International Masonry Institute, and the unions, who kind of questioned us. Honestly, at first they questioned, are you taking our jobs, to saying, let's look at the problems that labor is facing today, and that's availability. That's, we have seats and we don't have butts for them. Let's go find folks and engage them and get them into this labor pool that's desperately needed and provides amazing opportunities. And we shifted from, hey, I'm just going to be popping out these 3D printing machines all day, to let's engage the community and create a platform model where this tool is only a tool in a much greater piece. And yeah, it's been fantastic. We founded in 2022, delivered our first printer in late 2024, we'll call it early 2025. Got state accreditation for our workforce development program in August of last year, and printed our first homes. So it's been a whirlwind, but it's wonderful.
What a journey. And I'm so glad that I was able to come to Athens and see the machine and the process for myself and meet some of your team, or all of your team, I think, and some partners. Do you have any stories of the workers, what they were telling you when you first were having these conversations?
Yeah, I mean, the wild thing is, I don't care what your educational background is, what your experience is. If you're somebody who's worked the wall, as they say in the bricklayers, you know this inherently, this technology better than the folks who designed it. Uh, I'm laying down mortar. So it's really all this, a lot of effort to go do this really basic thing. And I have these guys, these old timers, I have these gals who have been in the industry. And even though they might not understand how the robotic programming works, how the ins and outs of the technology works, we're mixing and pumping an aggregate and applying it. And they, with their eyes, are better than any system we've developed at telling us if we're doing it well or not. I don't care what
Um,
their age is, what their technological background is. It's one of the coolest things to me, in that they can sit there on site and go, "You're gonna need more water." Like, looking at our systems, and we have pretty advanced systems measuring everything you can imagine.
wow.
It doesn't say we need more water, like, "You're gonna need more water." 5 minutes later, "Needs more water." Yeah. Like, they could tell. So, it's neat. I mean, listen, these things are synergistic. This is an evolution. It's we see things as disruptive socially, and if we treat them in a certain way, they can be disruptive in both negative and positive ways. We see this as an evolution. We see this as the next set of tools to enact and do the things that we've been doing for a long time. In our partnerships and what we've learned from labor has been amazing. I mean, it was an area, a book that I never opened, and to be able to go through it and work with these folks who have taught us more than, like, we haven't necessarily taught them much. We've taught them how to use 3D printing, but to understand the nuances of everything that goes in the job site and all the different parties that are part of it, that's fairly complex, and it's been wonderful to have such great partners to help us along the way.
It's so complex. I was listening to somebody say just recently that when he went through his project management training, he didn't receive a single bit of instruction on labor. What?
Yep.
Labor isn't included in the project management 101? And I mean, this is somebody who's been in the field a long time. I don't know how long ago his training was, but considering labor, bringing folks along, and respecting them, and also respecting their ideas. I mean, I'm really so delighted that that's what you guys are doing. And I know that we talked about the future of the industry on our previous call, and how it is the people actually doing the work that are going to bring the next iteration, or the innovation forward from here. And you're not even really claiming what you think it's going to be, because you're saying It's not going to come from us. It's going to come from the people who are actually doing it. And of course, also the young people who are training in the workforce development programs. So how can leaders help um, folks on the ground bring in the next innovation that's required in housing, in 3D printing in general or in housing?
Yeah. I mean, I think like any organization, it's aligning goals and understanding how everyone fits into those goals. If our goal is to solve the housing crisis, that means that we're looking to build more efficiently, right? We're looking to build quality, so things that last, and we're looking to build quickly. You need to really, those are the two things that we're optimizing for today, and making sure that everyone who's involved knows what our goals are and how we're optimizing for those goals and how their role fits within that. Because then they can be a systems thinker. They can think up, they can think down. If all you're saying is, "Hey, here's a tool, go use it," that's a thing, and that's how they're going to think. But if you're saying, "Hey, here's the tool and how you're going to use it and why we're using it," they can start to think in a systems approach. And to us, it's important to do that, to have pathways for feedback, making sure that we're listening
Mm.
and we're engaging, we're testing out different things. The way we finish our walls was absolutely informed by the bricklayers who were on site doing the building after they did a workforce development training with us. So, we're constantly looking for, hey, how can we learn, get that feedback loop going, and then
Tell us more about that.
so the way we finish walls and how they touch each other, right? So when you have a 3D printed wall that has to touch and integrate with more traditional construction, say at a window, how do you do it? There's not really books written on it. There's plenty of industry experience from the 3D printing side, but most of it comes from companies who have failed because most of the companies in the industry have failed. So you take those with a grain of salt and you say, great, I've got amazing engineers and a lot of folks in the educational space who have told us what to do, how to do it. When you're on the job site and you're working with someone who is just covered with mud like you are, right? Like when you're at these job sites, you're just dirty. As soon as you get there, you're going to be dirty and you feel like you're in the trenches. They're going to show you things and you're like, gosh, why didn't we think about that? And some of it's just simple, hey, how do you
Mm,
treat the material at certain periods of time? Remember, this material cures and how,
mhm,
so you have open windows when you can manipulate things with very simple tools like a trowel or a brush, right? Rather than spend a lot of money to bring big tools in the next day and cut things or
mhm,
down. Um, and then knowing how you can um, understand the tolerance of that material at different times. So you don't want to push the material too much and have a wall collapse. You don't want to put holes in it, stress fractures, but you can manipulate and change material within different windows. So just certain things around the signaling there are important, and then experimenting and trying things out. And if you were at our job sites while they were active, you'd see just a diverse array of people from ages to genders to backgrounds and everything working and all bringing their own kind of take on it. Some folks were literally
mm,
kind of give me a task, follow it, and do it. And they're learning how to work on a job site. Other folks are seasoned veterans who are saying, hey, I know this is y'all's job site, but I'd recommend we do things this way. And we're saying that shortcut just saved us, an hour today. So
mm.
there's a lot of wins along the way.
That's exciting to hear about.
Yeah. Yeah. And to your point on the where the next really revolution comes from, that's the K through 12 education to me.
Mm,
I just personally think that the way I think is probably set. I'm an old man now. I can't think of things that aren't along the lines of my lifetime of learning. But when we're teaching kids who are in high school, they still have that imagination. They still see the world as this open thing to be explored, not so much a box to fit things into. And that's the thinking that created the software industry. And Gates is playing around with the computer and saying, "Hey, this is more. This can be a different thing." The more we can expose people early and often to a technology, the more they can think within that technology and fit that into their reality, and that's where the real big revolutions will come from within 3D printing. I see 3D printing as a fit within the world. I know it. Other folks, especially younger folks, are going to see a world that has 3D printing in it, and that's going to be a different paradigm.
That's beautiful, that openness. The prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until what, like 25, 26?
Yeah.
So we're talking about like really being in your body and living from your emotions and a lot of cognitive intelligence, but not fully online. And I think that's a great opportunity to not have those structures, those mental models in there. Speaking of mental models, what do you think leaders need to unlearn? So those older people need to unlearn in order to, listen to young people and their ideas.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just the respect of ideas can come from anywhere. I think some of it's teaching, the things that I run into uh, generationally, or there's a lot of ideas. There's no lack of those. And I think leaders can be kind of burdened of, hey, a lot of people have ideas and there's a lot of bad
Mhm.
ideas. But if somebody tells you an idea, it's not a great idea, talking with them about that idea and exploring it with them is very helpful, and that helps them either open up to creating better ideas and better feedback loops, or maybe they had a really good idea, they just didn't quite know how to express it. They saw a problem that was real, maybe they came up with the wrong way. But I think just speaking intentionally with people and really being open and honest, and exploring those, it really encourages folks to think differently and push ideas up and down and over through the chain.
Ideas come from everywhere. Us innovators know that. And then also understand you're not the only one who has ideas as a leader. It's not only your perspective that counts. And there's a lot of that because to get to a place where you're leading an organization, you have to have very strong ideas. You have to be very decisive and firm and keeping everybody aligned, and letting go of that can be hard for people. I appreciate creating intentional spaces to receive feedback. So it's not just going to happen in your skunk works or in your R&D lab, although hopefully you're really letting those folks go wild with what their ideas are. It doesn't just happen in those spaces. The ideas come from everywhere.
Guiding them is important. I think in the past, especially early in my career, kind of open innovation is actually really difficult. And people don't really thrive if you just say, here's a blank piece of paper, give me an innovation. But if they all know, again, what they're working towards, what those parameters are, that's when innovation starts to thrive, right? You put a bunch of widgets on a table and say, let's build this thing, then you start to innovate on how you build that thing with those widgets. But if you say, I don't know, whatever you want using whatever you want, people are like,
Yeah, right. Yeah, guiding innovation, managing innovation is also so critical. Creating the conditions for innovation to thrive. Yeah, it's so big. So, what about your team when things get hard? Because I know things are always challenging in any organization. What keeps you all aligned?
I
And
mean, the the feedback. This is the best feel good business I've ever been a part of. I've
well,
been very fortunate to have worked at some great businesses, had some great success stories along the way, but the the real impact in seeing the impact, feeling it is amazing. Whether we're building in Chansey and you have neighbors in this neighborhood walking by and who are just genuinely interested in what you're doing to we're doing workforce development work and we have transitional workforce folks who didn't have employment and were in some seriously
mm,
struggling positions and
mm,
seeing them go from never having a job to working with us to getting a full-time role with a partner organization it's I mean that's life changing and the kids are by far the favorite. You bring a high school class in and like I mean it's otherworldly. They see machines they've never seen before. Their brains start to go wild and they start to come up with ideas and you're just jamming. So we hold on to those moments and those energies and we share those stories as a team. So even when it's scalding hot outside, you're on a job site and you can't help but like all the fluids in your body are sweating out, or it's freezing cold in the winter and you're on a job site, or your truck is stuck or whatever it is. Those are the things that drive us. Like those, we absolutely
Mm.
like we're not in this to be like easy button where we want to make an impact and we get those impact rewards along the way. So that's our cheat code. That's what we get to lean back on.
I could see how that'd be very energizing. I mean, the physical world, going back to what we were talking about earlier, you get that immediate feedback when you're right there in person with somebody, seeing things and feeling things, versus the digital space and getting your reports on the analytics. And you're so far from the customer and from the partners in the digital space. At least to me, it feels very, very far away. There's nothing more motivating than instant feedback. Let's go to the 3D printing process for a little bit because I'm curious to talk more about that. Where does 3D printed concrete work better than traditional methods right now? Get right to the nitty gritty.
Yeah, it's quick, it's quality build. I mean that's really it. We work with some great partners on the material side, and the Department of Defense is super interested in what we're doing because it's a resilient building method. So when we're building for the long run. This is stuff where, we went out with the Athens County Sheriff's Office, the Special Weapons and Tactics team, the Athens Police Force, and the OU Police Force, and
Mm.
made walls and shot them. And these guys are just like, oh my gosh, that's wild. Not that you need bulletproof walls for your home, but if they're resisting heavy munitions, when you're in a big storm, when you're in a heavy water situation, heavy wind, these things hold up really well. We can put quality down very quickly, and we can do so without the traditional bounds of a stick building, which is essentially hard right angles. That's where it's selling today.
Where does it not work yet?
It's not nearly as efficient at building up. So we really play in the rural space. Rural, you generally build out. You can build multi-story. Our machine's been used to build multi-story buildings before. But when we look at other building methods, we tend to lean towards those when it comes to building up because our machine's really optimized to build about 10, 12 foot tall walls, not, 20, 30, 40 foot walls. So we really try to constrain ourselves with those, anything where you're building kind of a single story out, and if you want to build on top of that, the easiest way is to leverage more traditional building methods on top of what we put down as that first layer, that first floor. For
Okay.
us, we're technology agnostic. We love 3D printing in that it inspires folks and it garners attention and it gets us in a room and at the table to talk about some real problems. But when it comes to a building project, W my team says, "What's the best way to accomplish this building project?" We don't go in and say, "What's the best way to 3D print this?" Probably makes us pretty different and oddballs, but we love 3D printing. If it's the best way, we'll tell you. If it's something else, we're gonna tell you that too.
Hmm.
We're trying to be agnostic with our project and
Mm.
with how we build, and if it's not us doing the building, then, we have a lot of partners where we say, "Hey, you want to build this thing, we're not the best bet, but these folks over here are great and they can knock it out for you." Um,
Mm.
at the end of the day, solve the housing crisis, not 3D print the world. It's solve the housing crisis, right? So it's stay in that lane. And we say silver bullet versus silver buckshot. 3D printing is part of the silver buckshot. It's one of many things that it's going to take to solve the housing crisis.
But if we stay with 3D printing a little bit longer, I'm curious for the engineers and the architects, what do they need to understand in order to design for 3D printing with a single level as you're talking about? What do they need to know about this instead of forcing themselves to kind of apply old mental models into something that's pretty new?
Yeah, it has design flexibility. I think that's the thing that most of the architects, engineers like is that, first of all, it's a digital model. So what you draw and what we program is what the machine does.
Mhm.
There's no on-site decision of like, "Hey, let's this out, bump this out," whatever. If you drew it, that's what we can do, but there's flexibility. Like I said, curves, rounding are really what we do well, and outside of that, it's CMU construction when it comes to integrations. So a lot of people get a little bit scared. They're like, "How do you run mechanicals, electric, plumbing with this stuff?" I said, "Well, most everyone has experience with cinder block building, right? CMU construction, and this is following that exactly. It's just a different way of constructing than your traditional cinder blocks, putting them on site."
Let's talk a little bit about the materials that you guys use. So, from what I understand, it's primarily concrete. Concrete is tough on Mother Earth. The extraction of it, tell us more about that and what you guys are thinking of in terms of alternate materials, if any at all.
For sure, yeah. So we have 2 distinct printing systems. The Scorpion's our cementitious printer, and the Mantis is our composite printer. Our composite aggregates are pretty varied. I think we showed you stuff like olive stone and coffee husks and oyster shells. There's all kinds of cool stuff you can put in.
So cool.
You sat in chairs that were made of bio-derived corn-based, polymers, so there's some really neat stuff. It on the other side of things, with the Scorpion, it is certainly traditionally, um, there's a significant environmental impact with concrete. There's a couple things. There's the actual optimization of the design. Can you require less concrete, and retain strength? And that's one thing that you can do with 3D printing. That's interesting. But the real other piece, and I think the thing that everyone's looking at and we're most heavily invested in is how do you do better than your traditional Portland? So we do have partners in the coal space. And we have partners in the energy space where we are heavily investigating doing things like trapping carbon. Can you create things that are lighter? Can you use waste that's already generated to create systems? And how do you get as local as possible with your mixes? So there's a lot. We want to be developing the materials that are strong, attainable, and really reduce the environmental impact as much as possible. And there's a bunch of ways to shake that out, and they're all being worked on, and universities are great partners for that. There's a number that we're working with, as well as, some of the federal labs. The Department of Energy's been a wonderful partner of ours in pursuing that, and some large private companies that you wouldn't think of, especially in the materials space, like coal companies, are very interested in, changing that outlook of maybe all this stuff that we have and we've already generated with these massive industries can be reused and repurposed in a way that's better for the environment.
I look forward to learning more about what the coal companies are thinking about there.
Yeah, you're going to
Uh,
see some impact in northeastern Ohio this year. We'll be excited to announce it and show you next time you're in Athens, and we can show you what we're doing. There's some pretty cool integrated projects where the coal legacy in Appalachia is one that has been negative at times for sure. It's created a ton of opportunity for a lot of people. It's also created some negative impact. And I think that story is really turning around. I think coal companies nowadays are much more responsible and they're looking towards innovation because the writing's on the wall. Just kind of burning this
mhm.
energy. There's probably more and better uses in the long term. And they're invested in making that a reality.
Well, it's exciting space to watch.
Very much
Well,
so.
I'm so glad that you were there contributing. Yeah, all of you together in the communities there. And I know that you got big plans for reaching, across the whole state of Ohio and beyond at
Yep.
some point. Yeah, it's
Absolutely, absolutely. I think
really
we can touch these communities and put our platform in more spaces. The impact is real. So for us, it's continuing to grow our impact in Athens and show what we can do there, and then speak to these other communities about doing the same thing, where we can bring that housing stock. And we're not bringing it from the outside; we're bringing it from the community itself. Right? We're saying, "Hey, here's how we do this together, and then here's how you do this in perpetuity." Which really that's what communities need. If they can't build for themselves, they can't house themselves, then it's a community in decline.
mm, And I appreciate that you're bringing the tool, the platform to help them to have their own agency, do what they need to do in so many different ways. Um, Before we close, there's one question that we always ask every guest on Shaping Work. And at the end of the season, we'll pull all the answers together for a special reflection episode. The question is, if you could shape one thing about the way we work, anything at all, doesn't have to be related to housing or 3D printing, what would you change about the way we work?
Yeah, I think ownership, you're really giving people more ownership over the work that they're doing and making sure they understand how that work is impacting whatever your overall goals are. That's the strongest thing you can do in work. Everyone should feel like an owner of their lives, and that includes the work that they do day in, day out.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for bringing your wisdom and your experience and stories to the podcast today. I really look forward to getting some feedback from people and following up with you.
Joe, thanks so much for having me.
Chris.
This is wonderful.
What I'm taking from this conversation with Chris today is that real progress happens when we stop chasing silver bullets and start building systems that honor people, place, and purpose. Vitruvian's work reminds us that tools matter, but ownership, honesty, and partnership matter more, especially when innovation touches livelihoods and communities. Leading through change, it turns out, is less about spectacle and more about staying grounded, listening well, and doing the work that actually holds. Until next time, take care of what you're building and the people it touches.